What's up, everybody? This is Tommy from Cellblock 64. I want to bring to you some content. I've been promising some videos for a long time. I had to jump through some hurdles in regards to work, but this is probably the first video on my own that I'm doing. I wanted to bring you guys, you know, some of my experiences. There's a specific incident that I want to talk about that took place over a period of maybe 3 years, right? While I was in Salinas Valley. For those of you guys don't really know me, let me give you a brief understanding of who I am, right? Obviously, I said my name is Tommy, man. At 17 years old, I was sentenced to life in prison. By 19, I was in high desert. Very first prison I ever went to. Involved in many incidents up there. Spent about 5 years out of the 8 in high desert and ADSEG, in and out. Then to Cork and Shoe, from Cork and Shoe to Kern Valley, from Kern Valley to Salinas Valley, from Salinas Valley back to Cork and Shoe, and then so on, right? Until I finally paroled in March of 24. I was granted parole in October of 2023. I was released on March 13th, 2024. A lot took place in that time, man. A lot of things happened. But this particular incident that I want to talk about is one that's kind of stuck with me. It's one that I have thought about a lot over the years, probably because it involved people that I really cared about. People that, even to this day, I have an affinity for because of their character, because of the loyalty that they showed to me, but also because of the bonds that we created through a lot of strife and turmoil. Um, but also, it kind of highlights some things in prison that I think a lot of times people don't really understand, right? Especially out here, people that have never been there, people that have never been to California prison, people who've never experienced California prison politics, all of those things, right? I think that sometimes it gets lost, right? There's so much going on in California prisons. There's so many politics. There's so many little nuances of those politics, right? That some people's stories get lost, which is ironic, right? Because I'm going to be talking about somebody today and you'll see the irony. Um, so there's this guy. His name was Barry Storey. Barry Storey was from Sacramento, California. He was a skinhead, I think he's a prison skin. I'm not exactly sure if he was part of a skinhead crew on the streets or family or whatever they want to call each other, right? But I know he was a skinhead. I don't really remember what particular group he was from, mostly because I just didn't care. Being honest, right? I kind of dealt with people. I didn't really give a shit where they were from. I dealt with them as they brought themselves to me. Story was one of them guys, man, that he was a dope fiend, straight up, but he was a killer. He was a dope fiend, but he was a killer, right? But he had developed a pattern throughout the prison system, throughout his time in prison, and he'd spent, I'm not exactly sure how many years, but at the time, I want to say maybe like 10, 15 years. I'm not exactly sure, but he'd been down a minute. And the pattern was he would go to a yard, he'd get himself in a tremendous amount of drug debt, and then he would pick a victim. Whether that victim was somebody who was already vulnerable, somebody who was already targeted, he'd raise his hand, he'd get off the yard, right? Blast the dude, go to ADSEG, right? And he didn't just hit him hard and hit him a couple times and then just go to the hole. This motherfucker rode him to the dirt, you know. That was his MO, you could say, right? He'd get himself in debt, couldn't pay it, and blast somebody, right? Particular incident, New Folsom, he went and got himself in a bunch of debt with a bunch of different races, went and found somebody on the yard that fell out of favor, blasted him, ended up in ADSEG. Back then, a lot of times you didn't go to the SHU for your SHU terms. You would do your SHU in the ADSEG, pending transfer, especially if you postponed the write-up pending the outcome of the DA referral. You would just sit there and AdSeg. A lot of times we did that because it preserved our property, right? We go to AdSeg, our TV, our radios, our clothes, our hygiene, whatever was in our property that we weren't able to get in AdSeg, we'd be able to keep if we were able to postpone it long enough for the outcome of the DA referral, and then our shoe would be up around the same time, and either they would transfer us or send us back to the facility from which we came or another facility in the prison, depending on circumstances. In this particular incident, Storey was transferred. He was transferred to Salinas Valley where I was at. But I already knew that Storey was there. A friend of mine named Josh Briggs was in New Folsom, and he had already called me and warned me that Storey was on his way. He had heard that Storey was coming down. He gave me the rundown. Hey, be careful with this dude. He likes to get himself into debt, and then he looks for a victim to run off. Don't let him do it. There was a lot of controversy after he left. A lot of people coming to the Y and saying, man, this dude owe me money, so on and so forth, right? Fortunately for me at the time, when Storey first got there, he landed on a different facility. Had he landed on my facility, things might have ended up different or maybe worse, right? I'm not sure. You know, hindsight's 20/20. They say, you know, you can't predict. It didn't happen that way, so I really can't determine how it would have went. I would like to think that I would have been able to handle it, but who knows, right? Who knows? Storey showed up on C Lower, I want to say 2011, 2012, you know, roughly in that area. He wasn't there that long. And, you know, at that time, there was these big wars going between the blacks and the northerners, and they happened to all be on lockdown on and off. Like sometimes the blacks would be on down, sometimes northerners would be down, depending on, you know, circumstances, depending on who got off last, depending on what's, you know, what was going on, right? And at this particular time, the blacks were off lockdown. And the others, we used to congregate with the others in Salinas Valley on that yard specifically, right? They would kind of share in some of our bars, and we kind of worked with them. But it was weird. It's like, it's the only place I've ever been to where the others were kind of separated. You had the Asians and, you know, people like that kind of like with us, but then you had the Pacific Islanders, and they were kind of with the blacks, right? There was this one guy, he was a Samoan guy, that Storey had convinced to buy drugs for him because Storey was already in a situation where he owed too much money, right? So he worked out these deals, right, with this Samoan guy, where Samoan guy would go purchase the dope in his name, Storey would pay the debt, right? That way, he didn't have to pay the debts he already owed. You know, he could pay this dude, and he lived up to it a few times. After that, it was over, right? He couldn't pay. So it created a conflict between him and this Samoan, right? So he goes out to the yard, and there's this dude out there named Edgar Sultan, man. Edgar was awesome, bro. He was somebody that I respected, somebody that, you know, I loved working with, man. He had a good head on his shoulders. He seemed to be fair as a shot caller can be in prison. He was extremely blessed by those organizations, those people that were still in the shoe at the time. And for those of you guys who don't know what I'm talking about, look it up. You know, he had big favor, right? And he didn't use drugs. You know, he's pretty much, you know, kept himself cool, real calm dude, and you know, made good decisions, man. Good decisions for the woodpile. I mean, straight up. And it might not be good decisions for the people that got whacked or the people that got hurt in the process, but at the time, I mean, it was good for the woodpile, right? And Edgar was on C Lower. At the time, I was on B Yard, and we were communicating all the time through cell phones, man. We talked probably every other day, right? We had a time, we'd call each other, we worked things out, communicate, kept things, you know, because at the time in Salinas Valley, we had a lot of stuff coming in, man. Drugs, phones, things like that, right? And we were able to communicate with each other, not just on the cell phones, but, hey, I'm going to send you 8 phones over that way. I need you to sell them, or these are for you. You guys get yourself on your feet, whatever. I would send stuff to them. When I was doing big things, they would send stuff to me when I was doing big, or when I was not doing as well, depending on the circumstances. And we kept each other afloat, right? Kept each other, you know, moving, and kept money moving back to the places they needed to go. And so Edgar, man, Edgar was cool, man. I really enjoyed Edgar's leadership style. I really enjoyed, watching his get down, man. And as somebody, his counterpart, on equal footing with him, with the same blessings, with the same things, it was nice to have somebody on the other side that I can trust to handle business in a similar manner to which I would, right? But here comes Story, man. And when I found out, I called Edgar, man, and I said, hey, bro, you got to watch your back on this dude, man. You got to watch your back on this dude. This dude is dangerous, man. He's dangerous. When his backup is up against the wall, he feels threatened, he's going to come out swinging, bro. He's not no punk. He's not no bitch. He's just a dope fiend. He's a dope fiend, man, that can't handle his bills. And he believes that violence talks. He believes that violence pays all debts, right? So he can just come out here and do whatever he does, right? On this particular day, or at this particular time, it wasn't the same day, I get a phone call from Edgar, man. He said, hey, man, this dude's Story. He's tripping on this other. He's saying this other stole some dope from him. He wants the whites to handle it, blah, 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 blah. Well, it created this turmoil amongst the others and the whites, right? And so Edgar went to the others and asked them what was going on. Found out the Story owed them a ton of money, but the others were willing to handle this dude because there was this conflict and this disrespect that was going on, right? But it wasn't what Story said it was. There was no thievery. This guy didn't steal the dope. This guy didn't take things from him, right? So Edgar, at the time, calls me back. He says, hey, man, here's the story. Here's what's going down. Man, I knew something was up, bro. And I said, Edgar, get that dude, bro. Don't wait. Don't hesitate, man. Get this dude, bro. Take this dude down. This dude is dangerous, bro. This dude's going to create havoc. This dude is going to cause problems. I never thought, man, the outcome would be the way it turned out, right? So, Story comes out, confronts Edgar. He elicited the help of another gentleman named Rebel, dude named Gregory Hosnell or some shit like that, right? And, some dude from Oregon. He was like on an interstate compact transfer. And anyway, he elicited the help of this guy. He also got together with a couple other Dauphine whites that were on the yard that were also going to be in trouble as soon as people found out how much they owed. One of these dudes was a Sacramaniac, man. I can't remember his name right now, man. I'll remember. I'll share it with you guys later because there was a whole bunch of shit that happened with him later too. But anyway, they elicited the help of them. The plan they made was Story and Rebel were going to blast Edgar. Story's real name is Barry Storey. His last name is Storey, Storey, right? And they're going to blast Edgar, right? Because Edgar isn't taking care of these others. Edgar is working with the others, and Story came up with this idea that somehow or another Story gave a white knife to another, right? Which didn't happen, by the way. Didn't happen. They did tell the others, if you need one, we got you to handle this business, right? But they never gave it to him, right? But that's not what Story told everybody else. So Rebel and Story go over there and they blast Edgar. And they start stabbing him. Yard goes down. As soon as the yard goes down, the whites jump up and rush the others. I believe the plan was on Edgar's part, or excuse me, not on Edgar, but on Story's part, was to try to cover up the stabbing of Edgar with the riot, right? However, the whites hesitated. The whites that were supposed to rush the others hesitated, and so it didn't go down right away. And because it didn't go down right away, the cops had already seen the incident taking place where Story and Rebel were stabbing Edgar, right? Edgar dies. Edgar Sultan dies, right? At that time, man, or let me say, at that moment, Story and Rebel signed their own death warrant. Everybody knows you're not allowed to put your hands on somebody who's blessed without very expressed permission. They know that. That is not a secret. That is something that is wide known throughout the Waupun, throughout the system. I don't care what race you are. I don't care who you run with. You know that if you put your hands on somebody who has the blessing of those who are well above everybody else, you're going to have a price to pay unless you have a very good reason. And that reason better be very good. However, the story doesn't end there. No pun intended. Story Rebel end up in ADSEG in Salinas Valley. D8, they called it right back then. I think they still call it D8, but it is one of those new units. Word got back there to the back, make them comfortable. Make them feel like they're part of the crew. So they put them on roll call. You know what I mean? They split their canteen with them. They split their packages with them for those who've been back there for a year or more, right? They worked out with them. They shared their books and their magazines. They really made them feel like they were part of the crew, that nothing was wrong. And they did that for 3 years. One thing I say about prison man is it's patient. People will wait weeks, months, sometimes years for a specific outcome. People have a long memory in prison. Prison taught me a tremendous amount of patience. Patience I use every day out here. You know, I'm glad I was able to turn it around. I'm glad I was able to put it together. But man, it was rough in prison. But patience carried me through. Story and Rebel spent 3 years in ADSEG. Came out to the yard, back to C lower. By the time they returned to C lower, they had moved all the others off the yard and put them on the upper yard. For those that know, Salinas Valley and 180 structure, you have 4 buildings on the lower yard, 4 buildings on the upper yard, C lower, C upper. At the time, all the others were on the upper yard with the Bulldogs, the Blacks, and I think that was it, right? There might have been some people out there who were non-programming people, but there was people. There was like EOP facilities up there as well. Like I think at the time 5-6 block were EOP, but they were all up there, and so Edgar and Storey. I mean, excuse me, not Edgar Storey, but Story and Rebel end up back on the yard. This was December 29th, 2014, almost 3 years after they killed Edgar. Just like any other day at Salinas Valley. Earlier that day, 2 and 4 had yard. Story and Rebel, I keep saying that, right? Story and Rebel they were living in 3 block. When they came out of ADSEG, they housed them in 3 block. I was in 1 block at the time. So Story and Rebel come out to yard. 1 and 3 get yard that day. Just like any other day, they strip you out to your boxers. You got to carry your shoes in your hand. All you're wearing is your socks and your boxers. You walk out to the yard. You got your shirt over your shoulder, your short over your shoulder. They wand you. They search your shit. And they send you on out your way. And just like every other day, all the whites congregated in front of the building in 2 block, shook each other's hands, told each other how much we loved each other. What's up, brother? All that crazy shit. Reported, checked in with everybody. How's everybody doing? You need anything? What's going down? Can I get this CD? Typical shit, bro. Then we went on about our business. When it worked out, whether you're doing burpees, pull-ups, dips, playing handball, or just spinning laps, right? This time, Story Rebel leaned up. They were leaning up, standing up against the tables, right? Talking, laughing. People were engaging with them, laughing with them, joking with them. What's up, brother? Good to see you, man. Man, you look pale, man. You look like you need some sun. Man, you look like you're so white, you get a moon burn, right? I mean, engaging with them like they would anybody else, right? Like they would any other person coming on the yard. Well, we knew what's up. If you could see from the outside looking in, you would have thought it was just a normal day on the yard. But there was people there, man. We all knew. We knew it was coming. We could feel it. It was in the air, man. There was this. For those of us that knew that today was going to be one of them days, man. So here comes 4 individuals, right? Led by a guy named Todd Morgan. There's another man named Skater. I forget the other 2 names at the moment. But anyway, Todd goes over the story, shakes his hand. They're talking, boom, boom. And, they're laughing. Next thing you know, like lightning, bro, Todd produces this knife. Big old chunk of steel, bro. Big old chunk. Smacks freaking Storey right in the right side of the neck, man. Immediately, a fountain of blood just come flowing out. And I'm not talking about squirting like you see in the movies or when somebody hits a jugular or whatever. I'm talking about it just came out like a waterfall, right? And his whole shirt, within a matter of a couple seconds, he had a white t-shirt on. Man, it was covered in blood. It was crimson with white spots. If you'd have, if you'd have known better, it looked like somebody poured bleach in those areas that weren't red. Um, it was pretty bad. But something amazing happened at that moment. While Storey was fighting, getting hit by Todd, and another guy came over and started stabbing Storey. Two other guys were stabbing Rebel. Storey looks over as he's being stabbed and being attacked, and he's trying to fight these dudes off. He looks over and sees Rebel on the ground. He sees two dudes on top of him. One of them was that dude Skater. I forget the other dude's name right now. And he goes, instead of saving his own life, he runs over there and he starts pushing them dudes off of Rebel. Before he could finish, he collapsed. He was dead as soon as he hit the ground. He didn't move not once. Hit the ground, that was it. Done. Right? But I look back, man, on that time, and I look back at that incident, and I think to myself, man, why'd he do it? Was it a sense of loyalty? This was his comrade. This was his dude, his co-defendant. Was it a sense of loyalty, some sort of honor? Where did that come from? Because I didn't like Storey. I had only met Storey briefly, and I didn't like Storey, right? I had my opinions about him, man. But he went out like a champ, bro. I respected that. I respected how he went out, man. He went out saving the life of somebody that he obviously cared for. And I don't, I'm not going to say that he cared for him in a way that was, beyond, prison. I don't know. All I know is that he seen somebody he valued being attacked. And rather than protecting himself, he went over there to protect dude. Now, he may have known he was already done. He may have felt it, that he was already done. But the last act this man made before he left this world was to try to save the life of another man. Somebody he respected. Say what you will about Storey. Say what you will about his history in prison. The man left this world with honor. I don't care what anybody says. He left this world with honor. And I respect the hell out of that. Now, prison is one of those places, man, where things just happen, right? Violence never ends. One thing leads into another. It doesn't end with death. Death turns into one killing, turns into another killing, turns into another killing, and then people forget. People forget about what happened. I haven't heard anything on YouTube about Storey and Ripple. And I've been watching, I've been paying attention, I've been listening, right? And I haven't found anything in there to talk about these guys, right? And not that they were some kind of like superheroes or anything like that, or they have more value than the other people they were talking about. But you know what I find ironic? The guy Todd Morgan was a friend of mine, somebody I went to war with, somebody that had my back to back against other races. When we were outnumbered, this dude was out there we were getting it together. When I was in the politics, he had my back too. Hey man, these dudes are talking, man. These dudes are saying some stuff they shouldn't be talking about. These dudes need to be dealt with. Let me handle it, right? Nah, man, we'll find somebody else, right? This dude was with the business, bro. He was a gangster, bro. Todd Morgan was a mother effing gangster, right? But he was loyal. And how you view loyalty, it depends on how you grew up. This motherfucker had my back, man. And I consider him a true friend. Not just in the game, but just in general. I've been out now for 2 years, just over 2 years. And while I was out, I talked to Todd on a regular basis. He didn't call me as much as, I'd have liked him to. He'd call me every few months, stuff like that. But I found out why. He was under investigation, man. He didn't want to put my name in the mix. And, man, again, looking out for me, bro. the true mark of a friend, man, looking out for my interest, right? Unfortunately, man, Todd was killed too. He was killed in Salinas Valley on the very same yard where he killed Story. Also on the same yard where he had killed a child molester too. You know, that is the nature of the beast, man. I love Todd Morgan, man, and I hope that somewhere along the line he found peace, man. He found some sort of honor. You know what I mean? I don't know like all the stuff that was going on because I had left, man. I had transferred out of Salinas Valley. I'd end up back in Corpus, and I hadn't really been there, and I kind of stepped back from the politics, man. I was still doing my thing, man, but I had stepped back. Laws started to change, trying to take advantage of these things, get to the parole board, try to earn my freedom once again, man, and get out here and start doing life the way normal, But I wanted to begin here with my YouTube thing because this is a story that kind of impacted me, man. This is something that, like, I'm not going to say it was the catalyst that changed my life, but it is something that I've looked back on over and over and over again. And thank God I'm no longer in those situations, man. No longer having to make those decisions. No longer having to witness those things. No longer having to be a part of this. The knowledge alone could be overwhelming for some people, and, every homicide in prison is a statistic. Every homicide in prison is a statistic. These are the things I want to examine on this YouTube. I want to talk about stuff. I'm going to interview people. I'm going to deal with people that I dealt with. I got one guy coming on, man, that was my co-defendant on a particular incident in High Desert that made waves throughout the prison system. And we're going to come on here and we're going to share some stories, his version. He has a really cool story to tell, man, and one that I didn't see coming. One that I didn't see coming. And I think you guys will enjoy it. Every number in prison, every CDCR number, there's a person behind that number. Every number, there's a story. Thank you guys for listening to me today. Thank you guys for coming in. Please support me. Hit the subscribe button. Hit that notification bell. Get into them comments, man. Ask me questions. I'm an open book, man. For those of you who don't know me, man, my name is Tommy, man. Cellblock 64. This is where we keep it clean, brothers. Be safe out there. Take care of your families, man. And keep life going, man. Remember gratitude.